Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Tales with TR, episode 238A. I'm your host, Terry Ryan Jr., and I'm glad to be with you guys in the middle of this joyous holiday season, today being December 30th. And today, normally, as most of you know, listen to my pods, I have an A episode and a B episode each week, and the A episode is usually me solo, talking about whatever. Last week, of course, it was some of my favorite Christmas movie selections. Well, seeing that I've got Senior coming on later today, and that's going to be the B episode this week. Most of you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about my father, Terry Ryan Sr., for any first-time listeners out there. And but today, so I mentioned to you guys before, I'm in a Bell 5 TV series called A Tippling Adventure. A Tippling Adventure is 4 episodes, right, stretched over the course of a month, and it comes on every Wednesday. This particular Wednesday coming, I believe, being the 4th Wednesday, being the final episode, being the one that I'm in. Not that you should watch it just for that. I figured I'd have Ben on because, a lot of you guys follow my happenings, but not only that, Newfoundland film and whatever. A lot of people I'm talking to are on the Newfoundland film circuit. To all you guys that are halfway interested, these Bell 5 TV series, there are a lot of shot around here. I've done a couple. I got one with Mary Walsh. I'll update you guys on that. It's coming out in 2 or 3 months, I believe. And but this one I did with Ben. Ben and I started the same year in film, and I kind of talked about it when I was working on crew with Republic of Doyle, and they made me an AD, which is assistant to the director kind of thing. Really, I was just a gopher. But I ended up moving around jobs because, you had to have some idea about film, and I had none the first, about behind-the-scenes stuff, and I had none. And Ben always wanted to be a director, and we were like low on the totem pole, but he kind of helped me through my first few days on set. And then as we, evolved, Ben became a camera guy and a director more than anything. And I got into the acting. I became a set dresser as far as crew and then acting. But we remained close. And Ben has had me in a couple of his films. Last year, I told you guys I did a stunt. I got like blown out of a building. Most stunts that I've done are fight scenes. But Ben actually, yeah, man, it was pretty cool. I had a harness attached to me that was wrapped around a crane, and a crane kind of pulled me as the house behind me blew up. It was one of those scenes. When Ben's on, I forget the name of it, and I was only in on it that one day. But we'll talk about it with Ben. But anyway, I'm going to have him on. It was a dream of mine because there were some great actors on in the film that I got to work with, and that's being from Newfoundland. I've often mentioned like some of my musical heroes. Sierra just passed away. Great Big Sea, Ron Hines, Rum Ragged, the Irish Descendants. I could go on and on. The Novaks, whatever it would be, Brothers in Stereo. I don't leave anybody out, but Dave Whitty. Jesus, I just had him on my pod. Damien Follett. I could go on and on. We have great, just an awesome Nick Earl arts community here, and I'm really, I try to keep an eye on what goes on, even as much music as anything, just because I'm into the tunes. And I'm often not around when, it's not like you can just go watch people act every day, but, you can go down and watch Nick Earl and the boys play live at Sleeves every second or third night. So I often mention music on here when it comes to artists that I look up to from Newfoundland, but, there's others, as far as acting. I said Mary Walsh, Mark Critch. Andy Jones is a legend here. Like, a lot of what Andy does is in theater and stuff. But he's been involved. I mean, Codco, when it first came here, he was involved in that. That's a legendary show. Like, like a skit, sketch comedy. Kind of right before Kids in the Hall, and it all kind of came together. We had, Andy's part of that hugely influential acting group of the 80s, early 90s that I looked up to before I was an actor. So he got to, we were in the green room chatting for 4 hours. First time I ever met Andy. It was pretty cool. Johnny Reardon, those of you that follow Hudson and Rex must know Johnny Reardon. Johnny's in this movie or in this series, A Tippling Adventure. So I'm only in very briefly. Like I said, it's 4 episodes and I'm in the 4th episode, but I was really pumped to get in there. Ben called me and said, I got something. It's small, but it's perfect for you. I don't want to give it away, but it did feel perfect for me. And I absolutely loved it. So we're going to have Ben on for a little bit in just in about 5 or 10 minutes to chat about the movie, what he has coming up, and actually to help me remember what movie that was that I often talk about the stunt. It was the most exciting stunt I've ever done. Anyway, we'll get his take on that. And as far as I talked with you guys about often movies that I go to see, like or dislike, whatever, I went to see Nosferatu yesterday. And I know it's out now, and a lot of you, I was surprised. The theater was closer to full than not. And the reason being, I did Nosferatu in school. I told you guys people laugh at the folklore degree. I laugh at it too. But part of it was, studying early stories and, well, you could pick through a plethora of courses. Most dealt with, storytelling traditions, artifacts that might, anthropology type stuff, how people lived, what made them tick. Archaeology is digging up the bones. Anthropology / folklore is, finding out what they did. How did they do to entertain themselves? What was the culture of the side? What was the fabric of the culture? Things like that. So one course I did was on influential early films. I've talked to you about the movies Citizen Kane and The Maltese Falcon. Those are two of my favorite really, really early. And those are the only two that I really have seen that I can watch and as movies now and I could be entertained. The others were like there's one Modern Times from Charlie Chaplin. I really can appreciate it because, it deals with the Industrial Revolution and kind of working for the man, being disconnected from, your boss and just kind of working on the line and, the pros and cons to that. I thought that was brilliant, but still, you got to kind of reach inside and go, okay, I'm going to, because there's a level of history and almost academic study to it, right? Nosferatu as well. It's entertaining, the 1922 version, but it's 1922, right? It's a silent film. It's kind of choppy, I think, but it is legendary in that it's the first horror film, widely regarded as the first horror film. F.W. Murnau and his directing was revolutionary at the time. I think Max Schreck, I believe, is the guy who plays Nosferatu, is his name. So all those, his performance is iconic, but a lot of what happens in Nosferatu in the original, as far as using that it was innovative in the way they shot it. And so if you're just watching it, I don't think you'd realize it. But if it was 1922 and you watch it, you're going to see like things that hadn't been done before. And a lot of it was to save money. Like, so instead of go to the studio and recreate all these scenes by different sets, they went on location to different places and they used shadows. You didn't always see Nosferatu himself in the bright light. It was shadows and it was dark and it was gloomy and, camera angles. A lot of other movies and at the time came off as plays, right? Because and I've mentioned some on here, just because of the technology at the time. You just use a room and then turn off the camera, recreate it, use the same room. So it was a lot like a play. Anyway, so the original Nosferatu, if you're really, really into movies, if you're a cinephile, it's definitely worth watching. Whether you're into that or not, the one I saw yesterday, Nosferatu, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu 2024, I thought was fucking awesome. I don't think you need to know anything about the first one to enjoy the second one, but it definitely had a little more relevance to me for that reason. And I thought it was incredibly well put together. I really did. So if you didn't know anything about Nosferatu, check it out. It's also, by the way, the first adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Didn't realize it came out in 1897. I thought Bram Stoker's Dracula came out a little bit. I would have said earlier 1800s, and if I was wrong, I would have said like 1900s. I just didn't realize, like, of course, 1897 is right in the middle. So, but I just mean with everything happening at the time, because film was just, like pictures were just starting to be developed. And the first, like, I think Birth of a Nation was one of the first films that you could go see, which is got some racist elements, but I mean, it's going back in time, so don't judge it for that. But it's, I think that's like 1914. The first like moving pictures, what they called them, it was like 1903, 04 that were like nationally seen. There were some in the 1890s, but like things were just starting. So I don't know why I thought Bram Stoker came from the Grimm brothers stories. The Grimm brothers were from Germany, and I believe like the 1830s, 1840s. So anyway, I was a little bit off, but Bram Stoker then would have written Dracula, and Nosferatu would have come out, 25 years later. So it was still fairly fresh in the minds of the public, and it was a very, very popular book. So I'm thinking people were, it's just like fucking Harry Potter today. It's still popular. When did Harry Potter come out? At least 20 years ago, right? I think it was kind of like that. And 1922 would have been right after that worldwide pandemic, right? So think now. We think pandemic 2020, it still feels like fairly recent, right? And it was fairly recent. Well, I believe it might have been the Spanish flu, if I'm wrong, whatever, but it was a pandemic that happened in the late 1910s. So 1918, 1919, right? Like tens of millions of people from all around the world are going down. So there was a morbid feeling amongst everyone. And then for the first horror film ever to come out about blood sucking after all that death worldwide, and I don't know what happened before the Great Depression. I assume a lot of people were really well off. I know that like prohibition was around that time. The Depression was about to come. So you take the context of when these films come out, and you can see why Nosferatu would have been. And I mean, just going to the movies. At the time, going to the movies with a ticket was a rare thing. It was just starting, right? And some of the first movies that you went to see were baseball games, if you can believe that. You could go like in 1920, Babe Ruth would have been just coming in. Baseball would have started in the 1800s. The major leagues were well underway, but you could go and like see that like after it happened, not live, right? And then like the movies were silent. Silent pictures right up until roughly 1930s, right? So given the technology available and the context to everything that was happening, you can look at Nosferatu 1922 and see the beauty in it for sure. Okay, definitely see that. But the recent one is true to the original while being, just enough. What's the word? Modern influence in the movie. I saw nods to the first one that I think anybody who's, like I said, a cinephile are probably going to love, but you could not know anything about it, and I think you'd love the movie. If you're into horror or Dracula or vampires or whatever, Nosferatu or Frankenstein or whatever floats your boat, I think this will be a movie that you're going to enjoy. Now, without further ado, I'm going to get Benny Noah on here. Like I said, actor, producer, friend, all-around good guy. Ladies and gents, we are back with a rare guest in an A episode. Folks, here we are, actor, director, producer, friend, cameraman, and all-around good guy, Ben Noah. Ben, how the hell are you doing?
I'm great, man. Thanks so much for having me. The acting thing, not so much.
I
I
know.
acted once in 2011. I was a dead body in a closet, and I haven't acted since.
I was going to say, I said actor just off the top of my head, but of all those things, and you, I've known the most in the industry. I couldn't know anybody else longer because I met you the first day on set. I
Yeah.
mentioned all that earlier. We were ADing actually, but so you were involved a couple of years before me. Then what were you doing? Background?
No, 2011, I did that NIFCO course. So we made like
Oh,
a little tiny film, and I went through it. And then the boys picked me up from the Duke because I was bartending, and they were always there at the watering hole. So I just wanted to see what was going on set, and then I got that PA job, getting people coffees, and that's how we met.
yeah. Okay. Basically, that's what we were doing. I was saying, because I often say AD, assistant director, but it's far from that. It's more like assistant to the director, and it's more like gopher. You know.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice to break down the ego to start it out and get that hard work in, and then
Yeah.
you can go from there, right?
Hey, I loved it. Now we're going to get to a little bit of that after because I do find it interesting, and I know a large portion of the people I'm talking to right now will. But I also know that people have slow attention spans, and one thing that I want to get to before before anything else, Ben, is that you've been working real hard and you put a lot of time into your craft. Now you're a well-known, well-respected director around town. Your latest uh, adventure is called A Tippling Adventure, of which I'm involved. Now tell us, A, how you got involved, B, when the episodes come, and what's about to happen on Wednesday.
Cool. Well, my interest in history was kind of the focal point that started everything out. So it's like the early 19th century was of interest to me at the time, and how an alewife at the time would brew beer, serve beer, and she'd also bounce. So my background in bartending brought some interest there, and then just my love for kind of the 30s and 40s adventures and early 19th century films like Jeremiah Johnson and The
Yeah.
Revenant, and there's a bit of High Plains Drifter and stuff in there. Just my love for movies kind of came through, so I kind of conjured up a whole bunch of different things and put it into one thing. It started off on December 11th was the first chapter. We kind of have it serialized in a different format as opposed to episodes. And then the 18th was the second chapter. Christmas Day was our third chapter, and now our big climax, which involves you, is New Year's Day. So that's coming out in a few days.
That's awesome. So, when I was, and really, not a day goes by that I am in any role acting that I don't thank myself and sometimes pinch myself that I'm in this situation. But this really meant a lot to me, especially the day that I was on set. And it was a nice scene. I was glad I was involved. But it's one thing, there's lots of people listening to this know Johnny Reardon from Hudson and Rex. I don't know if people realize Andy Jones, how big he would be in Newfoundland and how iconic he is and how much of a treat it was for me on that particular day because I was in there with Andy for half the day in the green room telling stories. I mean, so that was big for me. How did you go about landing all these veterans and icons of Newfoundland film?
I think it was a long process, right? I was the first assistant director a few years after the set PA stuff for some short films, and I met Andy on that, and we hit it off. We just kind of became friends. The interesting thing is, and then the Hudson and Rex guys, Kevin Hanchard and John Rear, and I met them because I was a camera assistant, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, so I kind of did a bit of everything and just ended up kind of gravitating towards similar wavelengths and mindsets. Same thing with you. We just hit
Yeah.
it off. I met you and I was like, this guy doesn't seem like he's full of shit like most of the people I'm around, and I like him. So we got along immediately. And then guys like Andy, I'm so lucky to have a guy like that be game to even read the script, let alone come out after an 80 centimeter storm and travel around in the 7 feet snow, right?
Oh yeah, it
It's
was
just crazy,
it
right?
was treacherous out there. For those from Newfoundland, we were out around Sunshine Camp, and it was just well. I mean, we needed the snow, but it was it
Oh,
wasn't your typical day in the green room.
yeah, it made everything look a lot better. But as a producer, right? I mean, we only had half the day to shoot that day, as you recall. I had to shut it down at one
Well,
because
I
freezing
do.
rain was coming, and that was after the storm. So it was like a wild party the whole time through. And then also it was my second time only dealing with union actors, right? So I didn't have access before because I wasn't working within the unions. So having the union get on board allowed me to get guys like yourself, Andy, Kevin Hanchard. Rhiannon Morgan, who's wonderful in it, Paul Ewan
Yeah.
Wilson, Lawrence Berry, Stephen Lush, and then Andrew Ravindran. So it's a real ensemble, and a blessing for me to have such a talented cast come on board.
Yeah, man. Stephen Lush and Larry, well, Lawrence Berry, I
Legend.
call him Larry. These guys are wicked too, right? Like I didn't mention them, but if you're local, even if you're not, but just, for me, it was a big thrill. And to have all this talent in one place at one time is quite wild. So now people, where can they tune in on Wednesday?
So it's exclusively on Bell 5 TV1
Mhm.
for the next couple months. So that's the only place you can see it. And then the rights go back to me, and I'll probably look at other places to access it. A lot of people had trouble because they thought if they didn't have Bell Internet, they couldn't get it. But you can get the Bell TV app and watch it through there. And I like to call it cinema on TV. This is my first time directing TV. But clearly the cinema influences are just all over it. And, we've had many chats about old films and stuff, right? And have similar tastes. So you'll probably pick up on those things as you're watching.
I can't wait. Now, so you just said, we met and hit it off. Both films you just mentioned, some of my favorites, by the way. Um,
Yeah, I knew
uh,
that. I knew it would be.
Jeremiah
Movies,
Johnson, love. I just went back and watched The Sting. I got a friend here, Kirsty from London, Ontario.
beautiful.
She's into the old stuff like we are. We went to Nosferatu yesterday, by the way. Now okay,
That was
you must.
amazing.
I
I
figured
thought
you
too.
of all people will know the original. What I'm talking about, right? F.W. Murnau,
22, yeah.
1922.
German
Okay,
Expressionism.
yeah. So, and I did that actually. I am into older films, but I did that as part of a folklore course right before I met you. Like it would have been months, honestly. It was one of the last courses I did to have to go through. And I said, I'll take the history of important films, whatever it was. And it's where I learned about Citizen Kane, Maltese Falcon, which remain two of my favorites
John
of
Huston,
all
legend.
those back then. And
He's a guy I try
Nosferatu.
to emulate a lot. John Huston. He's like a original adventurer,
Yeah, yeah.
guys like that would have done well 300, 400 years ago, but they're filmmakers at that time, right? And
Yes, I totally agree. Now, have you seen the new take on Nosferatu?
I went to see it in theater the second day it came out, and I
Okay, you
also
did.
like to point out that the Herzog version from the '70s with Klaus Kinski is also fantastic. I think I like all three of them equally. The new one is unbelievable. It was
I
fantastic.
thought it was. I just saw it yesterday. Yeah, I really thought it was, and I liked how. See, the first one was kind of. I did it as part of a course, so it was a lot about like how it was shot and things that you probably wouldn't notice if you're just watching it, and you
It's
got to
also
put it in
silent,
context.
right?
And that came out right after like the Spanish flu, whatever the worldwide pandemic was. So there was a literal horror in the air, right? A lot of blood being spilled. I like the context to a lot of this, and films were just starting, so like I'm talking about the original, obviously. You look back and if you put in context, like moving pictures as they call them, were only like 10 or 15 years old, even to be normal. It was just started that you could go to the theater. So to put all that together and to be able to go and see a monster, a take on Bram Stoker's Dracula, which would have been huge in the late 1800s, like early 1900s. So I can see why it was popular at the time, but I did it more for academic purposes. This time I watched and I really was pumped that they stayed true. Like there's a couple of scenes in the new one that it's an homage, obviously,
Totally. Yes.
right? It's
Yes.
just the shadows and the way, and he comes in, and it's still terrifying. I thought it was great. I don't want to give too much away, but I thought it was great.
And the key to homage, right, is like you don't want to just emulate it, do the exact same thing. You got to bring your own thing to the table, but respect
Yeah.
what came before. And I don't watch a lot of new stuff to be honest. But like I sought that one out because I met Robert Eggers and Willem Dafoe. I did a gothic film
What?
years back, and it opened up for The Lighthouse in Halifax because they shot it in Halifax. And I used to work with an old focus puller, and he introduced me to Defoe and Eggers. And Mr. Eggers, he's like doing everything I want to do before I do it, so it kind of pisses me off. but but he's like a young guy really into the historical film, and he's doing a great job with it. So yeah, I really it's nice to see other filmmakers doing that type of thing, and then also people embracing it because everything, like you said, everything needs to be so fast now. This TV show, it starts in black and white as well as in a similar aspect ratio, the Academy aspect ratio. To just after the silent films, as soon as the sound came aboard. With
Mm.
I believe the Jazz Singer was the first sound film. So I use the same
Yeah,
aspect
you're right.
ratio at that time period, and then things change and kind of modernize as new people arrive. But most people, like I had someone watch it, they didn't even notice the beginning was in black and white, so that's a good thing, right? But it's those type of films, you got to sit back and you got to pay attention, right? It's not, you can't be on your phone and doing a million things and get the full experience from these great films, right?
I totally agree. You know what fascinates me during that time? That time, in many ways, fascinate me from the Great Depression to Prohibition to just my own family, just the history of my family. I won't get all into it, but the 20s and 30s are very important to staying in Newfoundland, even so. Me just being here, so I'm intrigued. But the one thing that intrigues me the most about that whole period is that
Now, this
silent
is
films.
also 100 years after the TV show is set. The TV show is like early 1800s as opposed to early 1900s. But I love history, so I love this. Keep going.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Totally, totally. And I know we're going back for the Tippling adventure, but I just mean for that time period in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I love the silent radio shows. I believe the Maltese Falcon is based on Sam Spade from. I think the radio show came first, and then if it could have been the other way around, but in any case, Sam Spade was also a detective on the radio, and so for like, and either you went to a movie, but no one had TVs in the 20s and the 30s, so there was this period where, like Superman, the first Superman, it's a bird, it's a plane. You can go back, you can listen to it now. It's a YouTube search. I have an app, Old Time Radio, and I
Awesome.
listened to it. And
I got to
and
get
War of the
that.
Worlds, when people actually started driving out of New York because they were listening to the radio, and there was, and
Listen
a lot
well.
of this stuff ended up on film because film was just starting and the medium kind of changed. But I love that period. So everything that came out of it, and I'm not trying to be this pretentious thespian when I'm saying it, but that's why Citizen Kane and Maltese, but that's why these start to really intrigue me, because the 30s and 40s. I mean, I say the Beatles, that sounds like a long time ago. That's 64. That's way after this, right? You're talking way down the line.
Yeah,
Like these guys'
big
parents
difference.
were being born,
Yeah,
right?
totally
So,
different world, right? It's like looking
yes,
at the 70s compared to now. It's like a little bit different.
you're big now. Your what would be your favorite? Just from talking to you, I don't know, but I'm guessing the 70s.
In terms of time period for film and
Yeah,
art,
but you sit down and you're going to go, okay, I got 100 movies here. I'm going to watch this year. But these are just going to be random movies that I want to watch. Some I know, some I don't. I would bet that 50 of them would be from the 70s. Would I be wrong?
you would be right. The stuff I seek out now is like the really obscure stuff now from the 70s. But I mean, I'm watching stuff from the 20s and 30s and digging through that stuff now because I'm more familiar with the 40s and the 50s and 60s. But I think the 70s is the best decade for filmmaking because you had your auteur theory kind of at the time where directors were left alone to a certain extent to do what they needed to do. They were given the money they needed to do it, and they had producers that understood artists. They understood that it takes a certain amount of dedication and focus, and if you're constantly pulled away by, the boardroom that are looking at graphs and money and not thinking about story and the art, then it can get tedious, right? And I think independent filmmakers today now, you got like half the budget, half the time, and I'm trying to do what they did back then with like a fraction of the money as well. Since the pandemic, it's just gotten even harder, right? But I'm trying not to allow that to creep into the projects, and that's kind of why I'm inspired by all the older stuff. And I do believe that the 70s is probably the best. I grew up in the 90s, so I have a very soft spot. There's a lot of great films in the 90s as well.
Yeah.
A lot of that is nostalgia, but the quality is there as well, right?
I'm
Um,
into no, no, no. I'm you're. I was going to say you're preaching to the choir, but I definitely pick up on your love for 90s through our conversations. I don't even know why I said 70s, Ben. It might be your style.
no,
It
you're
might be.
completely right. I
Yeah.
like the character grittiness of the 70s, the no bullshit approach. and I like the aesthetic of the '90s. So, case in point, a Tippling Adventure doesn't really apply so much. It's got a bit of the '70s, but there's like '40s, '30s in it type stuff
Yeah.
as well. But this action film that we shot previously that you came and helped me out on, which I'm currently editing, that is a hardcore '70s character study with a '90s aesthetic, and I think combining those, you can really get something from that, right?
So this is I was speaking earlier. I was talking about my favorite stunts that I've ever done. Most include fight, but this is the one where I got. I don't want to give too much away, but I kind of get in a bit of an explosion, right?
Yes, it's there's
That
several
was my favorite
explosions.
stunt. Yeah,
It was it really? That's awesome.
ever.
I'm so pleased. I saw some other people do some pulls, in a similar way, but I wanted to really launch you like they did back in the day, right? And honestly, that was, you wouldn't believe the amount of time and effort just to coordinate that
Mhm.
one thing. It's
Yeah,
like absolutely insane, right? Whereas back in the day, you were kind of left alone. Like everyone kind of did their own thing. The stunt guys and the actors were drinking together. There's just less rules. Like, you know what I mean? You got to
yeah,
make
I
sure
know.
everyone's safe when you're putting them in a position with these intense stunts, and that's why we get the best stunt coordinators in the world, and we really talk about it, beat it to death before we do it, right?
Stunt
But
coordinators are so underrated, Ben. They're so underrated
oh,
now, knowing what I
where's the
know.
Oscars? Where's the Oscars for these guys? They're
Yeah,
incredible. They're working as
knowing what
hard
I
or harder than
know.
anyone.
Yeah, and I'm going. Take that day for example. Now it meant a lot to me because Glenn Redmond. And geez, what's Kyle? Kyle's geez, I'm losing my mind. I can't
Kyle
remember.
Snow and
Kyle Snow. But
yeah,
they were involved in the first stunts that I ever did.
and Tom
So
Dunn as well, right?
Tom John, yes, geez, he was with me. So
He
three of them.
actually ended up being the like kind of main coordinator moving forward, and Glenn really helped me out in the beginning to kind of set the groundwork. But it just takes so many people. I'd also like to point out that you're
Yeah.
saying you're so happy that I gave you a chance. You obviously work towards where you are now, and I see that in what you've been doing, and like you've
Mhm.
had such a prolific life, and that's captured on film, right? So like when I'm shooting you, it's like I feel all that there, and the audience feels it too. So like you've worked and earned everything you got all the way. So give yourself a pat on the back.
Well, thank you. And I love how you can pick up on that. Like I forget, but we often talk whenever we're together, especially. I mean, we've often worked in very recent history on camera. You were doing camera, I was doing set deck, whatever, or maybe doing some acting on Hudson and Rex. And we'll talk and yeah, that feel that you have, that gut feeling, that like what you just explained, you're like, and that works on camera. Yeah, but that wasn't part of the Tippling adventure. But yeah, I know what you're saying. You're like, I can read that in you. And when there's this energy, you'll work with a person's energy, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I don't mean like spiritual energy. You know what I'm saying. You
yeah.
could probably explain it better than me, but that's
You're a
why
real
your
you're a
hand.
real person there, right?
Yeah,
You're displaying a human being that feels real. And like with this, it's a bit short of this TV series, right? I'm doing much bigger things moving forward. I'm currently writing a 16th century continent spanning, decade spanning epic. It's kind of Braveheart meets the Seahawk. So I'm
mm.
writing that now, and I want that to be massive, right? But yeah, sorry, I lost touch about what we were talking about right before that. What were we just saying?
Well, no, we were just talking. I was talking about how you feel the energy of the not
Yes.
just the people that you pick to be in the movie, though, not just
Yeah.
casting, with the
Yeah.
whole setting of the whole thing. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
get back. It, and really, I forget. I've seen it. I loved it. You're the goth horror movie you're talking about
New
earlier.
Woman.
The one that you put out a few years ago, Ben.
Yeah, it's
What's the name
called
of
New
that?
Woman. New Woman.
New Woman. Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
That, right? Like, there's a feel. You watch that and there's a feel. You watch a Tarantino movie, there's a feel. It's not necessarily a horror goth feel, but I just mean certain people you watch, there's a feel. Tim Burton, there's a feel. Wes Anderson, I have a feel. You have a feel. How do you go
Oh,
about that?
oh my
Is that like
God.
you know what I mean? How do you?
That, that's so complimentary. It's amazing. I think it's just the obsession over the years. I'm not thinking critically about this to any like deep level there in the moment. It's kind of I've brought the right people together. I think subconsciously there's a lot going on just from my background and life experience traveling and seeing 10,000 movies and studying, constantly studying the great ones, as opposed to allowing the smaller stuff to kind of infiltrate my mind, or the constant, quick cutting of today, or the approach to today. Just not allowing that to creep in, because the movies I love kind of, they have a different tone and feel. So music is a huge part of that. So like for this one, a big intro point for me was my love for Irish music. So at the end of each episode, we have a full song by locals. One guy's Kyle Griffin. He's a Newfoundlander,
Yeah.
lives down on the Southern Shore, and he is an incredible talent. So like
Mhm.
having these songs by him and Alan Ricketts, and then my neighbor who moved from Ireland, who showed up with a homemade rhubarb pie the first week she moved next door. She's singing the song in the third episode, and she just sings in church and stuff. She hasn't really recorded stuff,
Oh,
but like
deadly.
incredible voice. Like sounds like an alewife leaving the tavern and like having a session in between the episodes or whatever, right? And then we have Adam Foran doing the music. So the music is a huge part of what's going on tonally, and the editing and the post production. So like trying to get everything in place when we're shooting. And then there's a lot of work done afterwards as well. But I'm kind of not conscious anymore of it, because I know what I want, I know what I don't want, and I just follow my gut throughout this. You're not going to be right 100% of the time, obviously, right? Mistakes will be made, but the fact that you're getting a feel that's good. I don't know what my style is really. I'm just working through it and just following my gut, and it's progressing into other things. But I think this proximal future film is going to be very different, because I've mostly been working in history, so that'll show another side. But yeah, it's kind of just naturally following through, and I think it's just from the many many hours and the obsession, and it just concretely being inside my mind without me realizing it anymore.
That's great though. That okay, and that I think would be, you know, that's like the precipice of style itself. In my mind anyway. When you're not thinking about it, you're just doing it, and everything that you've put into it starts to absorb through osmosis. And now this is my style. I mean, it could be baseball or hockey playing, it could be painting, or it could be directing, right? Or it could be acting. I at least that's what I find. When I take pride in it mostly with like writing. I know what my style is, and when I try to go outside of that, I find I'm trying. And whenever I get into a zone that it starts flowing, okay, my style is this is what it is. you know. Um,
And you don't
do
even realize you're doing it, I'm sure. 'Cause, I mean, you're in the NHL, you have all this wild life experience. It's like that's going to feed into everything
which is great when
you're
it
doing.
is that I know it's working. Like when you just said, when you just said like all these things that might complement your preference for say certain directors, and all of a sudden in a certain style or a certain era that you prefer, and then you add all these things together, no one else knows you're doing that, that'll
Yeah,
come out. Like when I see Quentin Tarantino, I love his stuff, he's probably my favorite director, but I can tell watching it that he obviously likes the good, the bad. He likes the spaghetti westerns. Okay, nice. Oh,
totally.
this guy must be a
Yeah,
70s B movie, or a Bruce Lee fan, or I can tell
yeah.
certain things that he likes.
And it's not like he's created his own style. Like it's
Yes.
tough to do anything new, like completely new. I mean, music, painting, like you are going to draw from things in the past, no matter what, right?
Mm.
So he's got this amazing, cinephile background of working in a video store.
Yeah.
I worked in a cinema when I was 13 in Grand Falls, the Classic Theater. I watched everything.
Classic.
Yeah,
For
I,
those that don't know, my favorite, sorry to cut you off, man. I
go
really
ahead.
am. I just want to say before we go back, it's my favorite movie theater on the island. My dad, Senior, is about to come on here for episode B. Senior is from Grand Falls. For those that don't know, you know him when we're from Mount Pearl, but he's from out there. I would go every summer for at least a month. And so my earliest memories of going to movies are right there in downtown. What's the street? What's the street it's on in Grand Falls again? Main Street, is it? Okay, there we go. Technical difficulties, schmechnical difficulties. Doesn't even matter. For those that don't know, yeah, Ben was gone about 10 minutes. His phone died. But we're back, and we were talking about, I forgot, Kirsty reminded me, we were talking about the street in Grand Falls. What street is that the
That's the classic on High Street. Yeah.
High Street? Okay, so
Yeah.
this is legendary. Carry on. I didn't realize you worked there at 13. No wonder. It's a similar story too. Quentin Tarantino, although another coast, another generation, but still very similar. So tell us about that experience.
So that was amazing, right? I mean, that being said, like my introduction to film was like pretty early. I had a close friend who had a father watch a lot of movies, and my old man watched a lot of movies. So I remember like hiding in the back of like the stairs in the basement when my old man was putting on like Outlaw Josie Wales when I was like 5, and like
Oh yeah.
being in the back and hiding and like watching the little tiny box TV like way in the back of the room. So I was watching movies relentlessly really young, and when I got that job it was just incredible because I was going to the movies all the time, saving up whatever I could, mowing lawns or whatever, but I got the movies free. So I was like, you didn't have to, they paid me, but I was like, I'll do this for free. So I did that for a few years. And then, just every video store back home, just, Alan's Video destroyed every movie there, the old section, right? And then we had the Centennial Grocery down the road from me and Brides. And then I'd come into St. John's and Blockbuster would be here. And then I just suck that dry too, just watch everything, right?
Watch everything.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so and I wasn't really involved in the arts. I was, I was more of an athlete. I was playing baseball all the time. That was
Yeah.
another way we got along.
Mhm.
So by the time I think I was 2011, I would have been 24, 25. That was when I decided to see like, okay, like, can I do something with this? And I dropped out of geophysics in Mon, and I got a one-way ticket to Thailand, and that's where I
Oh,
wrote
yeah.
my first
I
my
remember.
first script. Yeah, and that first script I brought
Uh,
back to you, and
yeah.
you brought it over to your family, and
Yeah.
we had a chat about it, and you took it real seriously, and
I,
most everyone else looked at it and was like, "What are you getting on with?"
I remember that, man. It's wild. Yeah. As soon as you said it, as soon
And
as you said it, I
do you know
remember.
what? The film that we did, the action film, is actually a prequel to that script.
Deadly. And by the way, what is the name of that? What's the name going to be when it comes?
It's called The Hunt. Pretty
The
simple and
Hunt.
to the point, but there's lots going on within that.
Said that. Look, Terry Ryan Sr. just showed up. It's Ben Noah Sr. from. Oh, you met Ben from Grand Falls. Worked with him in the film industry. Now he's directing a. I'm in a series that's coming Wednesday on your TV, Bell Fibe. It's called A Tippling Adventure.
Just heard of it, Ben. Never heard of it before. Just heard of it.
Well, it
That's all right. It's all good.
just came out. Yeah, I told you
I
about it a
think
few
it,
weeks.
I think it'd be right down Senior's alley.
Yeah, no, Senior, you're gonna love it. Well, first of all, Andy
You
Jones.
say he's from Grand Falls?
Yeah, Ben's from Grand Falls.
What part of
Came
Grand
in-
Falls? Just ask him that.
Here, take the mic. Here
Yeah.
you go. Look,
Ben,
sit down.
what part of Grand Falls?
So I grew up on Muir Avenue, which is
Muir. That's up by St. Mike's, isn't it?
it's down the
down by the hospital.
Yeah, down Goodyear. You go a little way. So
Yes, that's where my
spot, yeah.
sister lives on Chamberlain's.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Right down the road. Yeah, we're all connected in some way. And you probably played a bit of baseball back there too, eh?
What's that?
You probably played a bit of baseball in Grand Falls at some point, didn't
Well,
you?
of course. I was born and raised here, so I played hockey and baseball until I was I got married. I married a girl out here when I was almost 20. A lady. A lady. A lady, a girl. It was true though. She was a girl. And so I moved out here then. But I won a couple of junior championships in baseball and hockey and all that. But yeah, so how long you been in the film industry?
It's been about 12, 13 years now.
And how did you get in there from Grand Falls is what I'm saying. Like, how do you go from Grand Falls to the film industry?
I know it's crazy. Well, I moved it to go to university,
Okay.
and like I originally, I was in Marine Institute for a little bit, wasn't really feeling that. And then I just realized like I'm not the mindset for school. Like, I
Okay.
can do the academia and study and write the
Yeah.
tests and stuff, but I like to
Yeah.
learn on my own. So I just took a chance on myself and dropped out. And like I said, I went to Asia and that kind of changed my mindset
Oh my
completely.
Lord.
Yeah, and
And
then I
did you
wrote a
go into Ontario at some point or something, or did you just did it all? You
No, I
know.
did. I did it. All the shooting I've done has been on the Avalon and across. I want to expand, obviously, but like
Okay.
I got to Toronto with my first film and got to do a bunch
Okay.
of festivals, and
Well, you know everyone in pretty well, I would assume. If you don't know everyone, you know a goodly many of people in the film industry out here.
oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
pretty much know everyone. I'm really interested now in the next generation coming down the pipe because it's gonna be fascinating to see what people are doing in the future. I think we got a bright future. When I
That's
started,
good.
the
Well,
industry
you'd
wasn't
know.
there, right?
You're speaking from the inside, so if anyone knows, you'd know. I'll give you back to Terry now.
Since it is my podcast, he's but no, you can sit down. We're
Oh,
going to
okay.
end this one and start yours now in
Okay.
a minute. But yeah, so it's the Tippling Adventure. You're going to love it. Ben's
right.
been in. Ben played baseball with me on the Storm way back too.
Oh my Lord.
Dykers, but like
That's not yesterday.
my first day on set with Republic of Doyle, Ben was the AD. He came down in the basement and had
Wow.
beers with us. He didn't have a beard like that then, though. Um,
Oh yeah, it was babyface then.
So
Yeah.
where are you speaking from now, Ben? Are you in St. John's or Grand Falls or?
Yeah, I got back from Istanbul there in
Oh,
2016, and then
Istanbul. Oh, okay.
I kind of set up shop here and figured I could make a go in the film industry in some capacity. So I bought a house after the
We're on
pandemic.
in St. John's or Grand Falls.
St. John's. I'm
Okay.
Grenfell Avenue
Okay.
there, Central City, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, and I want
Istanbul. There's a name.
to. Yeah,
I'll
that was
tell you right
interesting.
now, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople, the old song in the 40s.
That's right. Yeah, it used to be Constantinople, and all the history there is fascinating too. I think everyone should visit there.
It isn't it. I know it's a gateway to Asia, isn't it? But
That's
it's
right.
like my brother is there. My brother Daryl, uh, and he said it's half sort of secular and half Muslim. It said like they let a lot go there, is what I'm saying, compared to Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or something like that.
Yeah, perhaps the like it's quite liberal, right? Like and the thing is, Istanbul's always been the nexus of East and West. So you have a European side and an Asian side, right? But like many of the Muslims I met were extremely liberal, and everyone was great and accepting, right?
A lot of the other ones, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember lots of wild things happening over there. I got stuck in a riot once, and as I was telling Terry earlier, like any wild experiences you have in life, like
Yeah.
if you're an artist, whether you're an
Sure.
athlete or whatever, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
just feeds into what you're doing, right?
But that'll
So it's
stay
like,
with you the rest of your life, yeah.
yeah, so it's like even the things that were like traumatic in my life,
Yes.
they made me a better director and a better writer, right?
Yes.
So
But did you ever, when you were there, did you ever feel threatened because you were from the West?
no,
Like I
I was
assume whenever they see someone like you or us, they assume that I would think you're from the United States.
Yeah, they thought I was Canadian mostly,
Okay.
but I was welcome with open arms by
Oh,
pretty much everyone, and
that's good. That's
I was
good.
treated like a king, I have to say.
Wow.
And I'll also say that the same thing about Cambodia and different parts of the world. Like I've been treated very well everywhere I've gone. It's just a matter of when you go to a place, you got to respect what they're doing, and
No question about it. You observe the rules of that country, and people do get in trouble by going and not observing the rules, disrespecting the country, and the country, they get thrown in jail or whatever, and then they think they have a gripe when they just entitle themselves to, wait a minute, if you're in, I don't know, if you're in Saudi Arabia, you don't go around drinking. You're in Saudi Arabia. They don't. I think it's alcohol free, whatever. So yeah, I think it's live and let live.
Yeah, and we're a global community now, and I mean Newfoundland especially now, right? We've got people from all over the world, and this whole that's a theme that in everything I've done. You know, the whole idea of xenophobia and racism. I mean, the fact that it even exists anymore is just disgusting. So I naturally that kind of feeds into my work as well because of the travels I've done, right? I'm a super proud Newfoundlander, but like I'm 3/4 Irish, I'm a quarter Lebanese. I'm a weird mix, right? And actually, Terry, when you were talking about 1920 and around that time, my great great grandfather, Kaleem, he was recorded in an interview saying, now he owned a bowling alley and, you know, a third of downtown, basically, which is all coming out now with this Lebanese business book that came out talking about how much of an impact Lebanese immigrants had. But he wanted to open the biggest cinema in the world before Nosferatu even came out. He wanted to do it in Newfoundland. It was one of the things that he didn't get to, but
Really?
I figured that trickled down to me because it's, you know, I'm kind of
Oh
the only
yeah.
person doing this type of thing, I guess, in the
It's
family.
no fluke that you're into it, and so was he.
No,
I
'cause
mean, yeah.
you saw it around you, so you
And
osmosis through osmosis. You just that's it.
okay, senior's going back there with no mic. I don't know if anybody can even hear it. So Ben, I'm going to record my episode with him now. Do you have
Yes.
anything else to promote before you go? Tippling Adventures Senior. So I'll show you. We'll watch the first 3 now.
Great.
And then on Wednesday is an episode that I'm in. It's a four-part series, okay?
Yeah, like a mini series.
Yeah, I showed you a little bit. I think you're getting mixed up with I did one recently called Skeet with Nick Sexton, and you went
Fantastic
to
film.
see that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for watching that, Ben. By the way.
Yeah, I
but
was director
came
shadow
after
on
that.
that one.
What's that?
I shadowed Nick as a director shadow on that film.
Yes, and that for other reasons. I'll probably, you know what, we'll talk about that, Senior, on the next pod. We might get Gary Sexton on here.
Oh yeah.
For other
Nice.
reasons. I mean, because Gary was on there with me, and I looked up to him, and we worked with Momoa on Frontier. He was the driver, and I was the assistant.
Yeah.
Me and Gary are over in like Europe, going, "What the hell's going on? Like, can you believe this?" I mean, it was. And Gary has a crazy story, as you know, as a lot of people know. Yeah. Anyway, I'd love to keep talking, but maybe
Yes.
we should get together soon, if nothing else, to go watch a movie or something.
Yeah, come over to the house, come watch a film, and like I said, the Tippling Adventures out on Bell 5 TV1 right now. It's a great bit of fun. It's got, you know, adventure, mystery, western, everything you want, everything you need. And The Hunt is coming out next year, and that's the most ambitious thing I've ever done. It took me 7 years to get it off the ground.
Beauty.
It's only a medium format film, but it's got all the power of a feature film. And stay tuned. I think you're all going to
And
love
you'll
it.
get to see me do a nice stunt. And New Woman, which you should pump more because it's great. It's
Thanks.
what, 5-6 years old now, Ben?
Yeah, well, I actually shot that in 2017. It came out in 2019. So like I'm operating in a whole other world from then. But you can
Where can
buy
people see it?
you can buy the film at on Blu-ray at Fred's Records, downtown St. John's, and Downtown Comics. And I think in the next year or two, I'm going to get a website going with everything and links, and people will be able to access everything in one spot.
You really should. Thank you very much, Ben Noah, one of my great friends and an up-and-coming director, to say the least, around town, a film industry aficionado. We're lucky to have you here in Newfoundland in our industry. Thanks. Anything else to say, Ben, before we take off?
We're blessed to have you two lads here as well. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Nice talking to you, Ben.
Thank you, my friend. So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been Noah. We're going to have Terry Ryan Sr. in episode B coming right up. If you're downtown St. John's and you want to check out George Street, why not stop in to the Bull and Barrel? Why not stop in to the Martini Bar, Rob Roy Confusion, Greensleeves, Turkey Joe's, and of course, Trinity Pub. If you want to have a bite to eat, check out Loose Tie, Blue on Water, of course, Wedgwood Cafe, who also do catering on Elizabeth Avenue, Peter Wedgwood, Wedgwood Cafe. If you want to work out, strength and balance for the body and mind, look no further than Ryan Power Conditioning on Rope Walk Lane. Strength, balance, body, mind. If you want to go to Mr. Lube, there's 2 locations, Newfoundland and Labrador, St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. One's on Torby Road, one's on Kenmount Road. Live, laugh, lube, Carpet Factory. Check that out as well. Chris Sparks, great dude, great athlete, owner of both establishments. One of my great friends. Check out the Carpet Factory. Check out Mr. Lube. True Hockey, take what's yours. Pitbull Pain Relief, the pain sticks that just don't quit. Go to pitbullpainrelief.com, see what all the fuss is about. And of course, Muggsy jeans. I loves me Muggsy jeans. They're comfort, they're fit. Loves me Muggsy jeans. Thanks, folks. Be back in just a couple of days with more Tales with TR.